what does it mean to have unlimited amount of intelligence in your company. I was the CTO at Shutterfly, shutterfly.com. And
to really use the power, it's all in the prompt.
It's about prompts, and I'm going to tell you, maybe up level it, it's about prompts and meta prompts.
Okay, what's a meta prompt?
Okay, a meta prompt is how, if you had unlimited amount of humans in your company, what would you have them do, right? If all of a sudden somebody gave you $1 million and said you can go hire 5 people, 5 highly talented people, what would you put them to go do? As a way of saying, if that's the case, those may be the areas worth investigating in terms of technical capabilities and implementations. For what we do today, how would I learn about Everbowl? How would I learn about, why Asahi is good for me, why I should have more of it, based on that. So the more content you can put out there, and before it's like, are you going to hire a team of, are you going to hire a bit bigger team? Or can you leverage some of this technology? Let's get the right brand voice, let's get the right image, let's go show up in the right places and deliver that.
Welcome to the show, Moudy.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be hanging out. We finally got it going here. So.
Yes, I got the pleasure of meeting you about a month ago now.
Yeah.
About a month ago, and we're now working together in a certain capacity. And if I had to say, and I said this to Andrew walking up the stairs today, this might be the most impactful show we're going to have on my show, or episode we've had on my show, because what I hope to get out of this and convey to the audience is so important for the time. Timing is such a key element for anything. It's not the idea, because it's when you do the idea.
Sure.
Today I couldn't do Everbowl again how I did it because I'm late to the party. Yes. So my timing was great.
Yeah.
And an area of your focus today around AI, and we're going to use that word very broadly because there's a lot of meanings and people use it differently, but that whole concept of the evolution of technology to where we were to now where we're going, and how human behavior is becoming less important to have an initiative and an objective be completed or done, in a way is an existential threat if you're not aware of it, much like the internet was when I became an adult back in 2001. And you watched the big shift from legacy business being done with, I remember credit card where you had the 3 pieces of paper and you swipe it over, my first credit card, and you get the blue and the white receipt, to
replicates,
to the famous line that you used to hear from so many mom and pop at smaller businesses, which is, internet's not for my business, because the idea of the internet was email.
Yeah.
That's what the average layman consumer understood as what this word internet meant was, oh, the internet's just going to be this thing where I don't have to send you a postcard or a letter. I hit a few buttons.
Yeah.
And then the famous, you've got mail, right? That was our exposure to it. And so people were unaware of how the internet would change the way humans live.
Yeah.
No one would have believed you'd have a refrigerator that was called a smart refrigerator and feed into a pocket device on your cell phone.
Completely.
Right?
As a matter of fact, you couldn't even, doing commerce on the internet was initially illegal.
Yes.
So it was not even the idea of e-commerce. First of all, it was not even legal to do that, to transact. So yes, we've come a long way. And just on that note about the internet, the only difference between the internet and AI, and I was graduating from college in the mid-90s. The only difference is this is happening so much faster, right? And I was comparing the cost, and this is, I geek out on some of these things. I was comparing the cost of bandwidth to the cost of intelligence. And the cost of bandwidth was actually going down at a much slower rate than the cost of intelligence, which is the cost of AI is much, much faster. And if you think about bandwidth, it's like, okay, bandwidth is kind of interesting. You're moving packets around, TCP IP packets. Now we're talking about intelligence is falling faster than that, which is, it's mind-boggling.
Well, and it really is an existential threat. And the reason I say that is because to most people who aren't who don't believe that they have a technical aptitude, or they don't pay much attention technically to how the actual technology works and why and what, they hear crypto and they think of Bitcoin, but they don't understand the blockchain technology under it. Yeah. They hear the internet and they think, I can go to Google. They don't really care how the tech works. The difference was how the internet said if you weren't an adopter of the internet and ingrain it into your business, over a period of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you became obsolete. To your point, AI now has the rails of the internet, which allows us to move information and things at the drop of a hat. Sure. The infrastructure and has all been laid out because everybody has this technology, the internet, and you can't do business without it. And so now it's not 8 years if you don't pay attention. It could be 8 months.
Completely.
Or 8 days. Hopefully not. But it could really change businesses today.
Yeah.
And my fear, because I travel the country, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs and business heads and division and department heads. They're not thinking about, they think of AI as this ChatGPT solution, which is a aggregator of information on the internet and feeds you a response based on things that have been published.
Yes.
And they're not recognizing that how that is going to and is shifting.
Yeah.
And my fear as someone who wants to help a lot of people, and what we're working together and implementing it at Everbowl and WeBuild is if you don't pay attention and learn about this, you may be out of business or become and find yourself in a position where your entire career and that industry is obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it could be an existential threat. And maybe I'm being a crazy.
I think absolutely not. I mean, I think looking at it that way is it's better to be more paranoid. You know, only the paranoid survives. If you remember that book from Intel's former CEO. I think it's helpful to be more paranoid about the current situation. And you're right, ChatGPT is a lovely way to get introduced to generative AI. It's a lovely way because you're kind of connecting for the first time. What made ChatGPT so popular was that for the first time you could communicate in a simple manner. You don't need to use APIs. You don't need to use your code. You can just type.
Like Google,
right?
It became the new Google for this world.
It's a great way, but it's like level one to the kind of capabilities you can harness. It's right. So it's like the first level to get introduced. Like, what would happen if you connected to so much intelligence? And I think part of it is when we talk about AI, I like to talk about like, what does it mean to have unlimited amount of intelligence in your company versus AI or ChatGPT or this or that? Because with intelligence, like, the more intelligence that we've had in the world, the better we've gone. More intelligence in medicine, we get better in medicine. More intelligence applied in just any fields. More applied, in computer science, we have the internet, we have broader technology. So now the question becomes, if I had unlimited access to intelligence in my business, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. How could that make me more competitive? How can that make me defend my territory? How can that help me serve my customers better? Ultimately, we want to continue to delight customers. How can I do that? And that was the biggest thing that before intelligence was one-to-one, human to human. And all of a sudden it's like, well, you don't need that anymore. So one human can access a lot more intelligence. So that is the kind of moment we're thrown into. And it's absolutely exhilarating.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting and scary. I mean, honestly, Definitely. It's exciting because, and anyone who watches my show, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I am not someone who is normally paranoid.
Yeah.
And I'm not paranoid. I'm more concerned that people aren't understanding the importance of right now, this moment, because you don't get to come back to this moment. And if you aren't part of the process and the evolution and the adoption of this new way of doing life, you might find yourself obsolete. And so I'm so excited for this episode because of all of the studying I've done for the last year-ish on this space. I believe you're the most knowledgeable that I have met. However, what you have is the most remarkable way of simplifying it in a language to me, who's not technically savvy and don't have that level of sophistication, to understand.
Sure.
And that is so important because a lot of times the importance of something can get lost on how we communicate it to everybody.
In the jargon.
Yes, in the jargon, right? Because
Technical
you say
people
words.
love to use jargon.
Yes, and look, it's great because it's accurate, but how do we understand it simply? And so, obviously in your bio, your expertise and your experience is unmatched and puts you in the position to be where you are. However, you're also a great guy. And you're a normal guy. And I say that in the sense of you are able to understand things from the normal perspective, because a lot of times we see the world through our own perspective, and someone who is very technical and maybe creating these new applications, to them their normal understanding of it is still more advanced than most of us. And so we as a society, it's not just for entrepreneurs, because how does an employee how does a 22-year-old kid about to graduate from college and looks at their future career track and say, I was going into this field, marketing, accounting, medicine, legal, a plumber. How are they going to position themselves to be relevant and forward-thinking and a differentiator in a world where companies now have the access to unlimited intelligence without the need of unlimited people?
Yeah.
And how do you make yourself obsolete-proof? If there's a better word, but I don't have one, so I have to ask ChatGPT for that.
Sure,
But Moudy, thank you. I mean, this is I'm so excited for this. And I would love to start with what was the moment that you really recognized this paradigm shift and took your focus away from the technical world you were with Shutterfly and your books and your author to launch Agentica and saw that this was the moment to do that? Like where was that, and what was the catalyst?
So I was the CTO at Shutterfly, Shutterfly.com, and managing a large scale team, and great company, it was a great company, great technology team, had a lot of fun. But for me, the ChatGPT 3 moment was for me like the defining moment where, reading research papers and reading like, okay, this stuff is happening. And then, November 2022, I want to say, I really just started playing with the technology. And one of the reasons why I always invite everybody, every place I speak at, I always invite everyone, engage with the technology, because it's one thing about reading an article about it. It's another thing to start using it. So what is the first thing I did? And of course, I look back and I was like, silly me. I was writing poems. And, I was writing poems and write this in the style of, write this in the style of this person, that person. And I was just delighted by, I put a little bit of text and all this stuff comes out. I was like, this is incredible. And of course, with all the hallucination. And then I started thinking about the internet moment and where I was in my 20s and where I am now. And I got to a place where like, there is something very special happening here. This is not a fad. This is not a toy. This is not about creating some emojis or creating some funny jokes or something like that. This is about harnessing, again, I went back to this, like, this is about harnessing intelligence. The opportunity that I saw was, and maybe I'll speak a little bit about AI agents, because this notion of AI agents is the idea that it's software that can now take action on its own. It's software that has memory, so it remembers things. It's software that can use tools. So all of a sudden it can connect. It says, oh, I know I need to schedule a meeting with Jeff. All right, let me look up my calendar. That's a tool. Looking up a calendar is a tool. Getting your email address is a tool. Identifying your time. Maybe it will be an outbound voice call and say, hi, is Jeff available at such and such time? So all these tools, but basically the agent understands the outcome and it goes and executes that. And I thought about how powerful could that be in so many roles right now where we just need help, especially in technology, like managing technology. We need a lot of help. And you think about marketing use cases, legal use cases, and all of a sudden, again, it's like, how can you put this agentic use cases and this agentic workforce to support humans, not necessarily completely to completely remove humans out of the picture? Because there's a concept in technology, it's called humans in the loop, which means even, I have a Tesla, full self-driving, it's great, but guess what? They always tell you, you got to keep your hand on the steering wheel, right? Because there are things that the AI may not be able to deal with. So depending on the use cases.
Well, let me pepper that for a second, because what about Waymo? Waymo took the person out of the loop. I was in Scottsdale this weekend, they were all over the place.
Yes, but the amount of technology that Waymo is applying to make that work is very, very different than the amount of technology that, let's say, like a Tesla is.
Okay.
So there's always like the aspect of like, yes, you could get it to be that reliable and that predictable, but that model is not exactly fully scalable. That's why they're not selling these cars and charging only $99 a month, or else it would be all over the place, right? So we can get into LiDAR technology, and there's just, what Tesla's doing, for example, they're using cameras, just very simple cameras, because they're building the intelligence engine without using LiDAR and other a lot more expensive technology. But yes, like maybe eventually we're going to get to a place where there is no human in the loop, but anything that's mission critical, given the nature of the technology, and maybe we can get into a little bit why AI is hallucinating right now. But essentially, there's still humans in the loop. You need some humans in the loop, especially in mission critical areas.
Today.
And
I guess for the audience and for me, how would you frame today versus tomorrow? Because the today to me is we're a little past email for internet.
Yes. Yeah.
But the tomorrow is businesses and people aren't needed, and now what do I do to create income for my family and to have purpose in life? And I'm whatever age, and I want to help everyone realize the importance of learning and being part of the conversation today. So is the today and tomorrow, in your opinion, a short period of time, or is it a 20-year horizon?
I think it's going to be a long tail.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a long tail. I think there's maybe two aspects to this part of the conversation. The first one is my children are 11 and 13. They are not learning in school. They are not being prepared right now, which is a much broader conversation. Yes. they are not being prepared for this world. That's the first challenge. Because the world we're entering now is a very, very different world than before. Right now, we are educating and training, like you train a dog how to sit still, how to work in a corporation, how to fit into a structure.
We're trading for the 80s. Let's be honest.
We're trading for the 80s. I would argue for the 60s and the 50s. Right?
I was only a kid in the 80s, so I can only go back as far.
We're training to be like we're training for almost the Industrial Revolution. Like that's how far kind of back is that you come in the office. We're training for people to sit still in an office, take direction, go execute that direction. What AI is effectively telling you, back to this idea of unlimited intelligence, what effectively AI is telling you now is like you on your own, if you have a good mind and you can creatively think about something, you can be your own company, right? And I am talking to so many entrepreneurs right now, one or two guys building a whole technology stack and doing stuff on their own, launching products online, and this is just happening. Now, again, we're not necessarily preparing that future, which that future is very, very small teams, right? Like very, very, very small teams. The notion of you're going to have a corporation with 150,000 people, like doing what? But to me, there's a double-edged sword with that, right? Because that's the existential threat for a lot of people. Because to your point, doing what? The next part is who's going to buy your product if they're not working and being a meaningful part of society? Yes.
So you're going to have these 1- and 2-man companies that can't sell anything because no one has any capital. So that's, to me, where I'm concerned of this moment, because as an entrepreneur and I have my own businesses, I want to sell outside.
You want consumers. You don't want consumers going away.
No, and they need to be able to buy something.
Yeah, our economy is 100%, not 100, but our economy is very consumer based.
Yeah, I mean it is
right? I mean,
America for sure.
Without consumers,
we're a consumer economy.
You don't have a. But I think that is, again, in my opinion, that is a long tail. Because I'm building this agentic software, I talk to a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And you talk to smaller teams, they're all AI enabled, they're using AI to build everything. You talk to normal corporations and they're nowhere near, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest and there's a lot of conversations, but there's nowhere near that level of adoption. So hence why I'm just thinking like this idea that we're going to wake up tomorrow and half the workforce is out of a job. I don't necessarily see how that would happen.
When I say tomorrow, I'm just curious, what to you is tomorrow? How many jelly beans in the jar? Do your kids graduate college?
I worry about my kids.
Okay.
I'll put it that way, which is, I definitely worry about my kids. And I am already thinking about, like, of course, what I talk to them about all day long is because, again, I want them to start thinking, if you could build anything you want, like before you would have to go, I need $10 million, I got to go do this. If you can do anything you want in your mind, how would you take your imagination and build that? And by the way, now it has to be a micro business. So before it's like, well, if this is not a multi-million-dollar business, you're not going to get VC funding. Well, you know what? All I'm trying to do is sustain my family.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you? Like is that somewhere living in the Midwest? Maybe a $70,000 business is great. Small SaaS offering. So I think that's again, I have not looked at it at a macro level to say what are the implications here. But maybe I'm just looking for all the opportunities, both for corporations as well as entrepreneurs, of like, this could be the golden age for entrepreneurship.
Possibly.
Yes.
I look at it, unfortunately, I'm more concerned, and maybe it's because I know too much but not enough, right? So I'm down the rabbit hole, but I'm not so sophisticated that I'm down the rabbit hole and can put every piece where it belongs on the shelf.
Yeah.
But I've been going down this rabbit hole for better part of a year now, and really the last 6 months, and even more since we started working together. And I'm just concerned that entrepreneurs, yes, I see it. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, I could do a lot of things, and I could see where it will be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, et cetera. And yes, smaller teams, okay, better G&A, maybe, because if revenue goes down because people aren't able to be a participant, then the movement of, private equity and VC firms, why would I need their capital, right? Yes. So now you have the movement of money moving. Yes. Then you have the entire stock market, which funds pension plans and everything. Well, if those companies downsize short-term, stock prices will go up. But then if revenue goes down because of that, stock prices go down.
Yes.
Real estate then goes down. So you have, I'm not here to put fear. That's not my style. I'm here to stress the point that I'm now looking at it like, okay, are we going to require as a society that human loop, or and then the best part, what industries are going to be born out of this that are going to create a whole different opportunity for people?
And this has been, I love history because
Yes.
I learned so much. There's patterns in everything in the history.
What they say, it doesn't repeat, it rhymes.
It rhymes.
Yeah.
And I was going back, I wrote an article recently on LinkedIn about the printing press. Because we hailed the printing press as like, we would not have had the Reformation, we would not had the scientific revolution would not have happened without the printing press. Why is that? Back to it was like, at this case, it wasn't raw intelligence, it was being able to share intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas few people had it before because getting a book was you had to be wealthy or in a university. And all of a sudden the common person could get access to knowledge. And all of a sudden we thought, the scribes were like, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. And guess what? We did pretty well based on the printing press. And the more scientific, the more knowledge and the more industry, so there's a, I'm a more of a believer in the abundance concept of the pie. The pie gets bigger. The pie doesn't just get smaller.
I'd love to hear that.
And so far, everything that has become, yes, we used to kill whales to get oil. Okay, we discovered other whales. Yes, some people lost the oil lamps. Okay, the people that used to kill the whales. But we somehow, with more energy, everything always expanded.
Yep.
As opposed to we kind of detracted.
But scientifically speaking, everything can always expand to a point.
Yeah.
Because eventually you will hit a point where, okay, then what? And look, maybe the answer is I'm still thinking about it like a 1960s problem. We're thinking
20th century. We're also thinking 20th century economic.
Yes.
And the economic model may shift, right? Because if you another slight tangent here, technology is deflationary, okay? The hard drive that you bought with, my initial hard drive that had 150 megabytes,
Yes.
if you back then you're like a terabyte disk drive is like, that would have cost, $1 billion, right? Because if you looked at it, but of course the cost kept going down and kept going down.
Like a 40-inch TV then versus
Everything
a 40-inch TV today, you get for $50.
You can get it for it's like, you don't even, what happened to the TV repairman?
Yes.
Well, it was cheaper to throw the TV away and get that. So the technology is deflationary. We are used to an inflationary kind of marketplace and inflationary economy, right?
Yeah.
So is there a remaking of kind of the 20th century, world order, so to speak? That's possible, right? But the idea is things can get cheap, and that may be okay because we're not inflating everything.
Well, that's
So
that's
it's
the good side, right?
Yes.
The good side is, to my fear and scary comment was, well, but if an acai bowl today costs $10 because I have all this G&A, but tomorrow an acai bowl costs 50 cents because I don't,
Yeah.
well, then you don't have to have the same amount of capital.
It doesn't have to keep going up by 6, 7, 8,
No,
12%.
to your point, it could be deflationary, which would then make it to where you don't have to earn as much capital and you don't have to work as much. And there might become more of a utopian opportunity to do more of what you love and carve out that income, as opposed to doing a job that maybe you don't love as much to stay alive.
Just
stay
because that was the economics. Now we're,
That's
it could
a
be
good side.
a very interesting, interesting place to live, but it's definitely a rewiring. And that has happened in history. This will not be the first time. I just think this is happening at a faster scale, at a larger scale and more rapid pace.
Yeah, and that's how I get warm and fuzzy again and put all my fears away. That's where I end. Because I'm an eternal optimist.
Yeah.
So I get nervous, I'm like anxiety, and then I'm like, okay, well, I can actually see how it'll turn better.
Yes.
And so I was curious to hear your perspective on those two things. And it's unique in the sense that when we were young, growing up, the world was very big. You didn't have access to people because we didn't have emails, we didn't have cell phones. It was, you have to call the company and get to a voicemail, and you have to look it up in a yellow pages, but one in Chicago, how do I do that, right? It wasn't simple. So getting access to information was hard. Encyclopedia Britannica, my parents and my teachers was like my sole source of truth as a kid.
Yeah.
Today, you have access to everything and information everywhere, and now it's trying to figure out what is truth amongst unlimited information.
Yeah.
You can overload it with false information and false narratives, which is dangerous. How do you see AI navigating that? Because what I loved about blockchain, especially, well, I'll just use Bitcoin because most people know it is.
Sure.
You can't hack it because every computer has a record, and if one person or 20 people or a million people try to put false narratives onto the chain,
Yes.
the other computers will recognize it as false news or fake news or incomplete and delete it.
Yeah. After 6 transactions, I think after 6 transactions of confirmations, breaking the blockchain is very trying to do that. Everyone else would throw it out.
Correct. Does AI as a learning language model as they grow, and maybe I'm using words incorrect, so please correct me, is there a system of truth to protect the world from these learning mechanisms learning something incorrect? Like humans don't need oxygen to breathe.
Yeah.
If we threw that all over the internet, ChatGPT would have believed that, right?
Yeah.
At this phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens with that?
What my answer would have been very different probably 6 months ago. My answer now is what's really incredible about some of the new models, and I'll just talk about a few. Gemini 2.5, Google's Gemini 2.5 that just came out I think a week ago. OpenAI has been doing some good work. Anything that's related to deep search, in each one they may have a different term for them, but deep search basically, it is going and it is doing, some of this stuff is like 40 hours worth of research on a particular topic. So back to the idea of access to intelligence and a research assistant, I think the technology and the capabilities there to really sort out the truth in a big way, okay? One thing that's been on my mind, I've been vegan for the last 5-6 years, and but you talk to people like they swear by eating, I don't know, raw liver or something. You're like, this guy's
and they're like doctors sometimes.
And they're like, this is the only way to live is only eat meat, no fiber, no vegetables. And and part of on my to-do list, on my backlog is like, I really want to put some of the AI to the test of write a good prompt that says, I'm really interested in the truth of the thing. I'm not on team vegetables or team meat or team this. I'm not working for the industry. I'm like, for my age, for what I'm trying to do, I'm also trying to personalize this for my objectives, because I'm not a 7-year-old and I'm not a 90-year-old, right? There are different reasons, but for my objectives, for what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to increase longevity, lifespan, mobility, flexibility, right? Like for these use cases, and I don't want cancer, right? So I may, it's okay, I'm not super shredded, but I also don't want cancer when I'm 60. What is the right answer?
Yeah.
And maybe, and it's like just trying to describe that and really getting at the truth of that thing and basically have it research 150 medical articles, understand them, break them down, and give me that. Like, to me, that's the power of what we're talking about. That is the truth telling that you couldn't have access to up until very recently.
Today, though, right? Because tomorrow but today it has to regurgitate already done studies.
Yeah, but it's now, it's like the equivalent of me going to a medical hospital, a medical library, and reading, did a PhD about 10 years ago or so, and and I'm out of practice with reading really deep technical articles. Like, whether it's medical research or not, there's a jargon, there's just a way of understanding. All of a sudden, if I am allowing AI to go do that for me, and by the way, I would run across 3 different models. So the truth telling is always about like, okay, most of what I do today is I use at least 3 different AIs that are independent, different, because I want to also compare and understand what is one telling me versus the other. So in that sense, I think we can get to truths in a very different way. Now, does that mean there's that end of it? The other end of it, which is of course is like some crazy thing on Facebook. Everything can now be, falsified, right? So the voice, the video, the this, the that. So some superficial thing you read and somebody, a lot of people just read and accept that as truth or as news. That's also very, very dangerous. And we have not figured out, sadly, Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, they're not really, to me, it feels like they don't care enough about like making sure this thing passes truth. They're just like, whatever.
Well, because that's not where they make their money.
Yeah.
They're not incentivized to.
No, you want to agitate and engage, right? You're getting engagement and scrolls and all that stuff. But we have, I guess what I'm saying is we have both, in much of what I look at the world, what is the risk and what's the opportunity? Yes. What is the threat and opportunity? And in every one of these things, there's massive threats, but there's also incredible opportunities at the same time.
And using that answer, going to the medical journal, where and when does it happen to, because my hope is that these tools can go look at all those past studies, but not just read the conclusion, actually look at the data and maybe come to a different conclusion because it has more intelligence to be applied, because the world was flat until it wasn't.
Yeah,
Antibiotics were dangerous, and doctors used to not wash their hands before they did procedures because they thought it was wrong. Yes. So we are constantly learning new. So maybe let me ask it this way. Today, do we have it? And if not today, when do you think we'll have it soon, the ability to go retruth the conclusions we made based on data we had?
Definitely. And I would tell you, like, right now, I am definitely, and I'm hearing that doctors also here. I was listening to this day, doctors are also using AI to support their recommendations and their findings, because they know now more consumers are getting all their health records. And again, it's like back to this notion of intelligence. if I have more intelligence, why would I not do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would I not apply that?
If
So-
truth is your goal.
Yeah, yes. In this case, like, do I have cancer or do I not? How bad,
Yes.
is this a tumor? Is that like, yeah, like I would want to know that. And yes, would I be willing to spend a couple $100 to really get some insights? And also tell me back to your point, tell me what I have not been told. Identify something that hasn't been identified,
Yes.
right? I mean, the beauty of what's going on from a medical research, and it's not my expertise. I don't spend a lot of time. I read about a few things, but
For the
that
sake of
level of
humanity,
medical
you should, by
research,
the way.
I mean,
But carry on. After you help us.
I can only
know.
I can only do so. But what I'm reading about recently is like there is an incredible amount of medical findings and medical research that's happening. That AI, back to your point about like AI is actually saying, hey, there's some of this other data that was overlooked, right? Like again, it's just an extra set of eyes. They just happen to be very, very
Well,
smart
correlation
eyes.
versus causation, right? And the fact that we can only look at things how we look at it, and we don't connect I drop a pen, you bend down to pick it up. 2 minutes later, you don't get hit by the car. You almost got hit by the
Yeah.
car. Did me dropping the pen prevent you? Because would you have been one step further and get hit by the car?
Yeah.
No one knows the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
Like that whole fun
Yes.
world is random game.
Yeah.
But when you have data and you have all this raw data and you have all these people and their genetic profiles and the way their genomes are and all of their chemistry, if you will, and
Yeah.
and all of that, are we really taking every piece and putting it into these models? And are we going back to all the tests and studies we've done and say, well, if we reapplied it today with first world thinking and from first principles today with the data technology we have, would we maybe get a different answer? Or is our AI not there yet to do that?
It seemed to me, and I follow Peter Diamandis a lot, who's very both big on abundance and big on like medical research. Like he's funded a number of companies. And what I keep kind of hearing and reading about is this idea that, depending on who you listen to, if we can just stay alive for the next 5 years,
Yeah.
like you and I,
Yeah, you'll live
okay?
forever.
Like the level of the capabilities where talk about personalized medicine, like very personalized medicine, because now we understand your genome, we understand exactly what you should eat, what you should, back to this notion of what should,
Yeah.
okay.
Favorable and
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you're an Egyptian that has this background, has this, male at this age, whatever. Here's kind of like, here's your therapeutics.
Yeah.
It's gonna be different than, we may not share all the same therapeutics because it's literally hitting. I mean, that to me is back to that. Like that to me is exciting because how much suffering is happening right now, how much suffering or how much loss of life is happening because we just don't know yet, right? It's like our whole human history. The human story is we just didn't know that before.
well, and I think it's
You
the way
know?
society has, right? We've done things in broad strokes. We look at what 50 to 60 to 70% will apply to, and that becomes our truth.
Yeah.
And we had to do it that way.
Yeah.
It's not a nefarious intention. It was just the way business and commerce and creativity and science had to operate. But to your point, what if there's a world where you don't have to do that? And I think that that's very exciting, both in business, in life, in personalization of everything. I buy toothpaste. Well, this is just the toothpaste that Colgate or whatever
Yes.
makes.
Yeah.
But maybe my teeth makeup could use a different
Yeah,
one.
your gums
Me and
react
9% of the
differently.
population have this. So there's 9% of the population use this toothpaste.
Yeah.
And maybe there's an impact, maybe there's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating when you get down that rabbit hole.
One of the things that I want to share with you, because you inspired me when I was listening to your podcast recently. You were talking about the 5 rules. And the one thing that I want to add to that, which I was thinking about, the whole notion about, connecting with other people to help you. And the question is like, well, what happens either A, the people I want to connect with are no longer alive, or what happens if like I can't reach person ABC, right? Like, I want to talk to Richard Bronson. I love Richard Bronson, read his books, and like, but what happens if I can't, he's not reachable. I don't know him. I don't know how to get to him. So one of the things I did, this was now like a project I did maybe a year ago, was this idea of, we all need good boards of directors.
Yes.
Okay. And I built it's a very, very simple app, but basically it was like my board of directors were like Steve Jobs, Bill Campbell was we call him the coach in Silicon Valley, amazing guy. Michael Singer is like a spiritual leader who I love, the Untethered Soul. I forget a few other, maybe Richard Branson was one, but the idea was I set up this AI model to basically support me as if when I'm having a meeting, it's like, okay, how would Bill Campbell coach me on organizational design and this and that? How would Steve Jobs respond to this, right? And of course, because of how much how much the AI models had scraped and just understand the thought leadership, the text, everything about that, like, all the YouTube videos that could have been captured from all these leaders. The idea was I'm having a conversation with every one of those, and they challenge me in different and unique ways. Now, to me, it's like, this is the power of what we have today. You could have that. Is it 100% authentic? Like, I could hear that, well, this is, eye roll. But it's like, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Because it helps you think. And what I was solving for is I want to be challenged from different angles, right? And every one of those leaders that I set up as my board of directors, the spiritual, more Buddhist angle about like, where's your ego get in the way? Steve Jobs may not necessarily be asking you about that. May ask you about how is the team and how are you thinking about the product? Are you meticulous and detailed? I'm giving you some examples.
I'm thinking but
it was super powerful. It was like really powerful.
By the way, if you still have it, I want access to this thing.
I need to revive it with I can't even, with now the new models, but I've gotten accustomed to having conversations with these models, and I found them to be, and again, it may sound a little crazy, but I found them to be so impactful, because sometimes we just want to have a conversation. And now if you're saying, I want to have a conversation with Steve Jobs about blah, 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 it's kind of cool.
I would honestly pay for it. I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying, I actually want that so bad, because I am the king of calling friends who are my advisors in different worlds. I mean, me and Trevor were talking about something marketing last night. While we're talking, I'm texting my old partner and good friend, Neil Patel. I'm asking for his opinion real time.
Yeah.
But if I could have a model where I could ask and include now people I don't have access to, I would love to ask Steve Jobs' opinions on things.
Yeah.
I've learned so much. I'd love to ask even non-technical, right? But you start to get into what would, I don't care. Pick your human, right?
Yeah.
What would,
Nelson Mandela. I mean, you could ask. Yeah. I mean, it's now what
how would John Lennon? What would he think of this song?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm a musician.
What I have found is, of course, AI is always wants to give you an answer.
Yes.
But when we get into hallucinations, right? AI also always wants to give you an answer. The more this individual has published, right? The more there's a lot of content, so oftentimes what I would do is I would basically, if there's principles from a book, I would upload the principles from the book into the model, right? So the idea is the more content.
Scan and upload it, actually?
Yeah, just let's say you're the 5 lessons, okay?
Yeah.
I could take those 5 lessons and add them. I could transcribe, let's say you have 50 hours, 100 hours of YouTube videos. I could build the Jeff model, or I could have Jeff basically part of my board of advisors, so I never have to talk to you again.
Please make that.
I basically could say, here's.
Can I have
Jeff.
one as a dad, Jeff, and then when asked for money, it does this, and I can send it to my 2 daughters, and I can it'll just know what to say, which is fine,
So there was a company. I actually registered AuthorMind. AuthorMind was the domain that I registered for this project. And then there's a company called Delphi. Yeah. And if you're familiar with Delphi.
I know Delphi. I didn't know AuthorMind.
Yeah. So AuthorMind was just again, at the moment, it's currently a domain.
Oh, it's yours.
It's just my domain.
Got it.
But Delphi basically was doing what I was wanting to do. First, what I was doing this for just me personally, but the idea of productizing it, which is now, you have all these different leaders. And of course, now they're putting their image, their voice, and all this stuff, and you can have conversations with them.
It's in a hologram.
Yeah, and again, all they're doing is uploading. Again, you have to have, if you've published or you have a lot of content, then because you have the conversations, and you're like, these are pretty damn good, authentic conversations, because they've had a body of knowledge, versus asking, if I can't asking my mom would not work.
Yeah, no, listen, I use on a very less sophisticated model, but ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I'll have to write something, I'll write it, or I'll ask it to write it, and then I'll ask it to put it in my voice.
Yeah.
And it does a decent enough job that when I'm reading it back, I don't feel like I'm listening to a stranger. Yes. I could see myself using pretty much all the words.
Yes.
I might have said it a little bit differently because it might have misstaked the facts or a story, but it's pretty good.
Yep. The amazing thing is the more context to any of these models, the more context you give them, and the more, when I hear from somebody who's like, yeah, this thing is bad, or I get some crappy outputs, the crappy outputs are not a function of the model, especially these days. It is a function, is that whole notion, garbage in, garbage out, right? It is that whole cliche is so valid for this use case. The more context you give it, and what I would just say, just maybe as a tip here, I always make it extra dramatic. Whatever task you're giving the AI to do, in this case, we're just talking about ChatGPT or whatever the model is, talk about it, this is a mission critical, what you're asking for is a mission critical thing. take its time. It's really important. And give it a lot of the do's and don'ts. What is it that you like? Back to your point about how do you make it sound like more like you or whatever. Give it some points, give it some context, give it like, I'm trying to solve this problem in this such and such way. I'm trying to do this in that way, right? If you just give it a one thing, proofread this thing for me, it will proofread it. But it doesn't, again, you just tell someone to proofread it. Like we always give our employees a lot of direction, especially when they're onboarding, right? You give them direction, like here's how we do things here. Here's our values, here's this, here's that. You got to give your AI, at least give it that chance, and you'll be pleasantly surprised by the output. But if you don't give it a great output, if you don't give it great input, you just get, you're going to get some very generic, hope you're doing well today, some very generic message, because that's the thing, that's what you
Well, I think this is a great segue, because now to personalize your brilliance for everyone listening, right, and to connect you with them, I think, how do we take this and apply it right now if I'm an employee, if I'm a business owner, if I'm an entrepreneur, if I'm a college student trying to get through school and just want to learn? And I'm going to ask you to correct me. I'm going to ask you to be the proof what I just provided to my team. I was actually with Andrew, my videographer and producer. We were talking about this, and it's like, I said to him today, to really use the power, it's all in the prompt.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in the specificity of said question and how you ask it, to your point. I may be wrong, but that is where I'm at with, okay, how do I get the best output from this system?
Yes.
Is specificity in what I ask and how I ask. And the differentiation today of utilizing this as a real tool is those who understand that are able to really find the power versus those who don't. Am I wrong?
You are 99.9% correct.
Okay.
It's about prompts, and I'm going to tell you, maybe up level it, it's about prompts and meta prompts.
Okay, what's a meta prompt?
Okay, a meta prompt is how you get the AI to build the prompts. Okay?
Okay.
So, for example, we might want to write a meta prompt. Let's say we're going to write a meta prompt about how to develop a website.
Okay.
Okay. You could just say, build me my website. I want to blah blah blah. Right. I want to do all these things. The meta prompt would be, you're a website designer. Here are the 25 variables you're going to request and ask. Here are the 25 variables you're going to basically create once I tell you what I'm trying to build. So now
what would be an example of a variable in that example?
A variable could be the industry. A variable could be the style of the website.
Okay.
The variable could be how many pages. A variable could be, there could be, color scheme, right? A sample website URL. I could kind of go down the list. It could be
use these to build whatever I tell you next.
Yeah, essentially. So essentially the meta prompt, because what you want to do is the AI is better at building prompts than you and I are, is ultimately, right? So if you can craft a high quality meta prompt, that meta prompt can be used for multiple use cases, right? So all of a sudden that meta prompt is now I can just say, I need to build a website using this meta prompt. The meta prompt it's like, how would I describe it? It's a little bit more like, it's more like the code that would generate the prompt, and then the prompt would generate whatever the final output. So think of a meta prompt as a very generic kind of building block, but it's a very generic building block that builds a very detailed. So
some of them seem specific, not general. You say a general building block, but if I'm giving it my industry,
yes,
let's use Everbowl, QSR, better for you health food. This is my avatar of consumer.
Yes.
It's pretty specific, no?
So you're giving, so it knows how to take, it's a general meta, the meta prompt is very general. It knows how to take those specifics and build a detailed prompt. So think of it as a meta prompt as like the factory, right? If you get a great meta prompt, very well designed and structured, now you can create multiple prompts, but even if we don't go there, to your point, the prompts are absolutely everything. Okay, and if I would show you some of my prompts are like 2 to 3 pages long.
I need to see.
Okay, because that is how you get that level of rich detail. And all of a sudden, like, it's no longer, the prompt is becoming the code, right? Back to why everyone should be a prompt engineer. The prompt is the code, right? But again, it isn't just build me a website. I mean, people are saying like that's like vibe coding is just you say a few things and let the technology. But again, we're talking about precision use cases. You want to build a very detailed prompt, because especially if you know what you want to get out of it. So yes, the biggest call to action is, to me, get curious, set up a couple of accounts, set up an account with Gemini and Google Gemini, Grok, OpenAI, Claude. I love Claude. I'm a huge fan of Claude. I love what Anthropic is doing. And then
Can I ask,
Yeah.
just because I'm curious, what, you just said something that I don't understand. Why would you love one more than the other? What is that?
so yeah, I look at it as like you don't have one employee today, do you?
No,
How come?
because I have multiple needs.
Okay. And different employees probably do different things,
Absolutely.
right? Like one may be better at finance.
Sure.
We call him a CFO.
Sure.
Another may be better at operations.
Sure.
We might call him a CEO.
But are the
So,
tools really that different?
I personally, again, so this is where it starts getting a little bit esoteric. I definitely find I know the different models and I know what they're good at. For me, I guess I can only speak for me, and I know I've now built like my go-to for different things.
But
So,
that's
yes.
a concerning answer for me because I was under the pretense
Hmm.
that these models go out to the world and get all the same objective data. So therefore, they should be equally as good as the prompt I give it at anything because it's available data.
So the training data is available to everybody, right? The training data, that part of the equation is absolutely accurate. Whatever is on the internet that can be scraped is what's on the internet that can be scraped, okay? But how Anthropic approached building their transformers, how they approach building their transformers versus building how OpenAI does it.
Yep.
It's the same data, but how they do that is very, very different, right?
But that's a bias then.
Um,
Then a bias was used to build the answer, so it's not as objectively verifiable.
I haven't thought about it that way, but here's what I'll tell you as an example. And if you spend any time on X, because that's where
Sure.
most of the AI guys who are doing a lot of AI development, like that's one of the streams you just see all what everybody's doing there. It's now very, very clear. Claude 3.5 and Claude 3.7, which is Anthropic, it is very clear, very superior in terms of code development.
Okay.
When you're trying to write code, it is the best model for code generation. Okay. Why that is, I don't know the answer. Why that is, how it thinks, right? Like how it thinks about when you're asking it to develop code, but it is superior. Okay. It is absolutely superior. The one that just came out, Gemini 2.5, reports are showing that is even more superior. But nobody would say, oh yeah, I'm using OpenAI's 4.0 model for code development. It's great for other things, but it's not, to me, like I use ChatGPT, like OpenAI, ChatGPT, for me, it's a great general purpose, general purpose tool.
Google.
Yes.
Our
it's
new version
just
of
absolutely great. The new image creation is amazing. I was playing with Everbowl stuff.
Thank you.
The 4.0, it was kind of fun because, was creating both new bowls and new bowls on
By the way, that
surfboards.
image you sent me?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's just, just having fun.
Yeah.
It's great. Like Claude does not do any of that, right? So for image generation, OpenAI just created this breakthrough in 4.0. That's amazing. We'll see who's next. So that's what I mean by like, it's not about the underlying truth of the model, so to speak. It's just more like one is better. And by the way, nobody announces it that way. It's just like a lot of,
It's just what happens.
just a lot of what happens, a lot of like how people are using it. They're like, wow, so all of our development is using Claude right now. Like 100% of our development is using Claude.
But if I'm
Yeah.
OpenAI team right now,
Yeah.
wouldn't I immediately take my engine, my learning language and say, go to Grok, go to Gemini, find out why they are superior to us in code,
Yeah.
take best practices and lessons, implement it into our tool, and make us better immediately? Wouldn't it always happen every day?
I think unless you have spies inside, I don't know. I think you have spy because now it's literally on the foundation. It's basically the foundation of how the model has been built and trained. So it's not as easy as just scraping what they're, you can scrape their output, you can get their output. I'm sure everybody's trying to learn what everyone else is doing, but you've heard of DeepSeek,
Yep,
right?
Of course.
I mean, I think DeepSeek came and disrupted everybody. And they just came out of this reasoning model, and supposedly it only cost a few $1 million, which probably may not have been the case. But long story short, it was definitely a lot more productive of a model. So they could have learned a lot about how the other models worked, but essentially no. Hence why I just say and maybe I guess if you're not using anything now, starting with something is good.
Sure.
But back to what you were suggesting. It's really important that get one of these things and learn some prompting.
Yes.
The first thing I invite everybody. By the way, I invite interns as well as like CEOs. Like nobody should. If anyone is like this is above me, I'm very worried. I would be worried about that thinking. Everybody should be learning how to prompt. Everyone should be learning how to work because that will be the future of work.
Yeah,
regardless of what
100%.
happens.
Although you just educated me on something I did not understand. I figured they were all, didn't matter which one. I can go to Google, I can go to Yahoo, I can go to Bing, I could go to Ask Jeeves if it was still relevant.
Yes, Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, I can go to any of those ones I want, and they all have scraped pretty much the internet, so therefore the data is the same, and it's just how they show it to me.
Yeah, no. They are becoming very specialized, and I could one of my buddy's company, I'm a board member there, Backplane.com.
Okay.
I'll show that to you, play with it a little bit today. Backplane, what they've built, it's both a security model, like they're trying to secure how companies use AI, right? But the other cool thing is they have 30 models, okay? So when you put one prompt in there, and I'll show you that later. When you put one prompt in there, you can get up to 30 models. I look at 3 or 4, because it's more than 4 is probably crazy. So you give it a prompt and you get 4 models. Everyone spits out. So you see what the feedback is from the same prompt. You see what each one is, and you'll be like, oh wow, this is very different. They're not all identical, right? And comparing and contrasting is it's helpful. You'll see one is better at data science, at math.
I'm kind of struggling with this, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because my understanding today is whatever I upload and input into the system, is stored on my computer and doesn't go to everyone else's. Like that data, if I put Everbull's or my Jeff Fenster's home accounting finance 2024 receipts and my budgets for the year and everything me and my family spent, and I need it to help me with my books and accounting so I can give it to my accountant and do my taxes. It's not giving that information to help anybody else. Nobody could be like, what was Jeff Fenster's taxes in 2024? Because it was saved.
Now we're talking about a security privacy issue.
Well, before we get to the issue though, but that's my understanding of how it is today. Not where it may go, and I am subject to them breaking that stuff and doing all the things that all big corporations eventually do. But the data, as I understand it, is saved on my local version of this application or in my login. So it is not available data for everyone else, because the only way I can see why Grok may be better than others is if most of the code developers spend their time on Grok, it would become smarter at code development based on the prompts and challenges that people in the industry would give it versus another. But in the absence of shared inputs and prompts and data, then the only way I can think about it is if 2 chefs were given the exact same recipe, why it might taste different.
Yeah, but because they're both the know-how. The one chef was trained in Paris.
Yeah.
The other chef was trained in Italy.
So they're going to use ingredients a little.
They're going to do things differently. Now you're going to get a dish, right? You're going to get a dish. Something's going to get delivered.
Yeah, scrambled eggs. Is just why does it taste different?
Yeah, it's just going to be like this one. And again, I probably couldn't tell you 2 years ago. I probably would not have been able to tell the difference, but now I can absolutely tell the difference for these use cases.
Fascinating.
And by the way, but when I show you how the model spits out the same prompt, you get different answers. You're like, yeah, I see that. Llama, which is Facebook's, Meta's thing. Llama is definitely different than Claude, is different than this. One could be brief, another one is way more detailed, another one's just making shit up, right? You're going to see...
which one is that?
Right, you're going to see like, oh, okay, I see that, I see which ones. Now, having the output of 3, you, the human, back to you, the CEO and the supervisor, you, the human, decides, I like this piece, and I like that piece, I like that piece. I'm going to get the best of all worlds.
And do you take all 3? Copy 2, put it in 1, copy 2, put it in 1, and play the triangle game and say, tell me, how are these better than what your answer was, if at all, and tell me why these are wrong?
I've done so many different examples where I often, by the way, I always given the important content, if it's an important enough thing, right? I always just say, hey, this is feedback I got from the other model.
You even name it?
I literally tell that. This is the feedback I gave a model. I think there's certain, when we're talking about prompting, and I know we're running.
This is.
But when we're talking about prompting, I always ask it to critique it. Like, never take the first answer. That's maybe another part. Never take the first answer that comes out. Always say, can you critique this? What's wrong with this? Make this better. Make this punchy.
Yes.
Make this tighter. Like, use language like make it punchy, make it tighter. What is the essence of this thing? Because sometimes, you want to, just like we humans your first draft is never as good as the 7th draft. At least my writing always hopefully improves over time. So the first thing it gives you, it's like a draft. You need to look at it. You need to respond to it. You say, this was good, but let's critique it. What are the other side of this? Mm-hmm. If you were, I love this when I'm negotiating something, when I'm preparing for a VC pitch, right? Yep. I'm always like, give me the 15 reasons why they're going to say no to me about this. So ask it to be the adversary.
Yes.
Get the training to be the adversary.
Not your friend.
So not your friend, right? And then you can help you okay, help me with this answer. How would you respond to this? But so again, it's like probing multiple angles. You always get better results.
Yeah,
Long story short.
It's unbelievably fascinating. I mean, this is the world. And full disclosure, I am a client of Agentica.
Yes.
We met through a mutual friend, and I fell in love with you. So, but I believe wholeheartedly that what you guys are doing at Agentica is an absolute requirement for any business that wants to be participant and a leader of the future. Now, does it mean you have to hire Agentica? No, but everyone can take the stairs if they don't want to take the elevator. That's up to them.
Yeah.
I like the stairs in real life, but I like the elevator with my money in business. But how would you, and I don't mean this as a commercial because that's not the intention, but everyone's who's listening, they're like, okay, I'm a VP, I'm a director, I'm an entry level, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a brand new entrepreneur, I run a 7-figure, 8-figure, 6-figure, 9-figure company. I don't think I need this, but Everbowl, we sell acai bowls in a quick serve restaurant. Yeah. We need it all over the place. And it was fascinating so far with how much work we've already done to identify all of the areas, both for AI and then the ones that we don't need AI, we need some other business intelligence application.
Automation
or just use something that's already been around for 5 years because we're overthinking it.
Yeah.
How would you suggest to the masses right now, because they can't all hire you because you don't have enough time because you're working on Everbowl, but whatever extra time they can have, how would they and how should they, knowing what you know and knowing what you do, take action right now? Besides obviously reaching out, which you all should, by the way, reach out to Moudy at Agentica.
Happy to help. I think I always start with get curious. I feel like when you engage with the technology, back to if you just engage with the technology and see like, how could, every business is kind of the same, as in there's a marketing use case and marketing business processes. There is, some kind of creating a service or creating a product and delivering the service and the product. Everybody has support. Like there's no company without support, right? So I think the aspects of like what we typically do, first of all, we try to just describe, here's the state of the art. Like here's all the things that could be happening in your business. But the other part is like every person knows their business the best, as in I'm struggling with this area. I'm struggling with, I can't keep up with marketing. I can't keep up with support, right? Last week we had a meeting with the city and county San Diego leaders, CIOs, CISOs, and business leaders and council members and stuff like that. And when you hear about the challenges they have in city government, it's like, if you have, 50,000, you're backed up by 50,000 requests and you got to go solve them. How are you going to do that, right? How can you improve your business process in terms of just customer support and delight? So I think an aspect of, without even talking about AI, because AI is just a tool, right? Like it's just one tool. The worst thing you can do is I want to sprinkle AI all over my business. Well, that's not exactly.
I kind of felt that way at the beginning.
Yeah, that's kind of like, okay. That's not exactly kind of what you want to do. What you want to do is like, where are the areas that I could really benefit from? And given the current state of the art, where can we benefit from them? How could I, accelerate in these areas? And if I did, these areas are meaningful. Because we could build AI all over the place, but it's like, what is going to make the biggest difference in your business? And I think that's what I would encourage people to start thinking about and look at it. And the other way is if you had unlimited intelligence, and sometimes it's like, let's think about analog as in flesh and bones. If you had unlimited amount of humans in your company, what would you have them do, right? If all of a sudden somebody gave you $1 million and said you can go hire 5 people, 5 highly talented people, what would you put them to go do? As a way of saying, if that's the case, those may be the areas worth investigating in terms of technical capabilities and implementations.
Okay, I'm going to ask it. I'm going to challenge it a little bit because I love the answer holistically.
Yeah.
I think the danger of the answer for a lot of entrepreneurs is now they're going to think too big and they're going to try to reinvent their business as opposed to better shovels and axes.
Okay.
Right? Because they actually are building something already. Like I could say, oh yeah, we're going to go build a new point of sale system and we're going to go build a new way to create acai from a tree.
Yeah.
But what if I figure out a way to do my accounting and ledger faster, better inventory controls, better labor models, put my staff better? Those are going to impact my revenue and profitability tomorrow versus changing what I'm doing. So in that model, the challenge I feel that entrepreneurs get stuck in and where I get asked a ton is, and I just see it, the trees that they're seeing every day blind them for the forest that they're in, right? That whole adage.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an enormous opportunity to take very simplistic view of what are we doing today that cost us money and time and energy and focus that doesn't necessarily equate to an ROI positive or an accretive complement to our business, but is a requirement of our business.
Yes. Yeah.
And it won't change what we do every day. And top line revenue might not change.
Yes.
But there's a way to remove below the ledger.
Or efficiency, like increase.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was thinking more along those lines versus just saying, go launch some new product or service or something else.
Because if you give me unlimited money, I might hire you and you know.
I was more thinking along what you're describing, which is how can I, and maybe I should have, the way I was framing is, how can I make my customer support better?
Okay.
How can I make my marketing better today? How can I make it more efficient, more effective? So for example, you know, if we think, again, the old model of, you know, one of a client I was working with, you know, their typical thing was 1 blog a month.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like, okay, you need about 4 blogs a week to get attention because everybody else around you is generating, it's that gravity marketing, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to pull you towards me. I'm going to put one thing a month is not going to pull you towards me.
Right.
I'm sorry, right? Not when your competitors are just offering a wealth of thought leadership, a wealth of how-tos, a wealth, you know.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm not talking about like, let's go build something new. It's more of like, for what we do today, how would I learn about, you know, how would I learn about Everbowl? How would I learn about, you know, why Acai is good for me, why I should have more of it, you know, based on that. Like, so the more content you can put out there, and before it's like, are you going to hire a team of, you know, are you going to hire a bit bigger team? Or can you leverage some of this technology? Let's get the right brand voice. Let's get the right image. Let's go show up in the right places and deliver that. So I'm more, I guess, I definitely am trying to be way more practical than just like go build a rocket ship.
And then I'll ask you to go one more layer. So I'm gonna fine tune my prompt.
Yeah.
It's all in the prompt. It's questions and prompts,
Improve
right?
the context.
So, okay. Now I got my meta prompt. Now we're going to the real prompt. So now imagine, because you have the privilege to and the opportunity to sit in companies that are a little bigger and higher than the majority, right? So think about the 5 to 15 employee, city only, one location, blank. You know, bookkeeping firm, salon, hair salon. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter. Where the business owner is so in the business every day that the leadership doesn't have the opportunity to sit abstractly above it.
Yeah, and
so
actually observe the business from a step back versus
from the ground level.
You're inside. Yeah.
So they can't identify what those may be. How could they, or what should they do today to figure out, and maybe it's a prompt they can put into a system. How would you suggest to them to learn that to then go to the next level?
I absolutely, so it is a prompt. Okay. This is maybe what I'll do, you know, whether it's ChatGPT, because I personally think on the next podcast, we'll talk about why voice is so important. What we're doing here is voice.
We're doing in like the next 14 days,
voice
by the
is
way.
the interface.
Just so you know,
okay.
you're on the hook.
That's awesome. Okay.
We're limited on time today, but we're doing a double.
Okay, sounds good.
This is too good.
Let's do it. But voice is such a, like, in my mind, voice is one of the most natural ways to communicate. Like, that's all we do. We learn to talk, like, you know. So OpenAI, if you get ChatGPT Pro, ChatGPT, I think Professional, right? Pro, you could basically get something, or Plus, get something that you could talk to on your phone. I still do this, okay? Put on your AirPods, go on a walk, and have a conversation about your business. The first prompt would be, I am whatever industry, back to the prompt, like, I'm this industry, here are the kinds of problems I'm solving, let's break them down as if you were my, you know, McKinsey advisor. I just spent $5 million to have you come help me.
Sorry,
like,
McKinsey.
Again, make it all very, very grandiose, right?
Sure.
Don't say I'm a, you know, but like, you know, you're basically trying to harness the best intelligence, the best thinking, and like, have a conversation. Here's the problems I'm having. I think sometimes the difference between typing and speaking is so different. I personally have found it to be so different. So have a conversation about what is going on. That would be probably the first place I would start.
Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to download it. When you see me walking down the street, talking to myself, I'm actually talking to my prompt, and I'm going to say, I need Moudy to look at my business, and I'm going to use you.
Yes.
And I'm going to do the same exercise.
And you may be pleasantly surprised. And like, just again, you're connected to the super intelligence. Right?
So we're so late.
Yes.
And I'm so bummed. So I'm going to make you agree right now. Are we doing this again in the next couple of weeks?
Sounds good.
You promise?
We'll have some big,
Okay.
I'm gladly come
You're
on
locked
down.
in.
And we'll just get some big Everbowls.
See, now I need the, can you please reverse time and give me another hour. But we got to do rapid fire.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think so. I'm trying.
You're going to stare in the camera one.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
Okay.
And you just give me the first answer that comes to your mind.
All right. Let's do it.
If clarity was a currency, what's something you'd pay for and what price to fully understand it?
How to live more peacefully.
If AI could solve one human problem in your lifetime, what would it be?
And suffering.
And suffering. Okay, I want to challenge that, but I can't. It's rapid fire. Now I'm going to put that in the next one. If you could, what do you think the biggest threat to humanity is from AI?
The machines learn to be evil like us and turn against us.
I have a fourth one. Do all roads lead to Terminator?
Hopefully not. Hopefully
you
not.
heard it right there. But don't worry, because when we launch this, there's going to be a second one, because there is so much more. I have so much more I want to dig into about you, because you have a perspective we all need to hear.
Thank you.
I'm so annoyed that the time is up.
It was lovely hanging out.
Yes.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Moudy.
Appreciate it.
Hey everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.